Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 112. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be going over a strategy that is really not a strategy, but there's kind of some things in the game that kind of make it a strategy. You'll maybe see what I'm talking about once we explain things here, but basically we're going to be not feinting our opponent until we feint our opponent, and then we win the game. Because starting off with our Overquill here, we have a very specific move that plays into the strategy called Fell Stinger. And Fell Stinger, what it does is that it's a 50 base power move, but whenever you pick up a KO using Fell Stinger, you get a +3 in attack. Which is definitely nothing to scoff at by all means, it's just that it's really difficult to get off the Fell Stinger, and it's like extremely circumstantial, even with the circumstances that we're using right now, trying to make it more likely to happen. It's very difficult to get off the Fell Stinger. But then we're also Terra Bug on Overquill, so that not only are we getting a damage boost on our bug type moves, but also a Fell Stinger is being raised to 60 base power, which gives us the best chance to KO something with Fell Stinger, and then have Overquill try and sweep the opponent with Poison Jab and Crunch, since the Bug, Poison, and Dark combo gives us neutral damage into basically like everything except for like Steel Fairies like Mawile and some other really specific type combos. But just to make sure that no Pokemon is KOing Overquill, we have the Intimidate to try and lower the attack, and we have the Safety Goggles so that our moves are mostly not being redirected by powder moves, so that we can always pick up that Fell Stinger KO wherever we need to pick it up at, but also so that we're not getting put to sleep by powder moves. Next up, we have Quaquaval, and Quaquaval is another Pokemon that likes to specifically KO Pokemon at certain times because of its Moxie ability, meaning that whenever we pick up a KO, we get an attack boost, and with our signature move Aqua Step, if we do it with Aqua Step, then we get a speed boost, so Quaquaval can very quickly just start out speeding the opponent with the Aqua Step boost, and then we have so much good type coverage in our Fighting Stab and Ice Spinner also to get rid of terrains, and we can even go for Terra Fire, Terra Blast if we want that to be an option for whenever we want to resist things like grass or fairy type moves being thrown into the slot. We got a lot of type coverage here, it's pretty nice, and we also have the Clear Amulet just so we're not losing any of those attack boosts that we are getting from our Moxie to things like Intimidate. Next up, we have one of our Pokemon that we're going to be using it to not feint the opponent, and the most easy way to not feint the opponent is with a move that basically just can't KO the opponent, called a False Swipe, which is mostly used in the game in order to make it easier to catch Pokemon, because whenever you False Swipe something, no matter if you're level 100 and the thing that you're trying to False Swipe is level 3, you will never knock out the opposing Pokemon. So what we can do with False Swipe is that we bring the opponent really low, and then we use either Overquill's Fell Stinger, or we use Quaquaval with Moxie in order to pick up the KO, and then we hopefully try and sweep the opponent from there. And since we are a Technician, we will be getting a boost on the False Swipe, making it 60 base power, and also increasing the base power of our Bullet Punch, which does really good Steel type damage, and we have the U-turn so that once we False Swipe something, we can U-turn out into one of our Pokemon that we want to get the KO with. And then we need Scizor to take some hits, so we are Aguav Berry until we can bring in one of our other Pokemon. And we are Terra Water, just because water gives us good resistances. Next up, we have Persian, basically doing the same thing as Scizor, but just, it's Persian. Like, I really did not think we were going to have room for a Cantonian Persian on the 128 teams challenge, just because Cantonian Persian is really power crept. The only thing that Cantonian Persian really has going for it is its speed, but we are another Technician False Swipe Pokemon, which means that since we're normal type, we're also getting a normal stab boost on the False Swipe, so Persian is like one of the best False Swipe Pokemon. Another Pokemon that I was debating putting on this team was Hisuian Decidueye, because with Scrappy, we would be able to False Swipe Ghost types, but it didn't really work out with both Quaquaval and Decidueye. But we also have some pretty light damage in Aerial Ace, Knockoff, and U-Turn, and technically a benefit of using Persian is that it's so weak that it's unlikely to KO things, which makes it easier to KO the opposing Pokemon with the 2 Pokemon that we want to pick up the KOs with. And then we are just normal Terra, just because Persian's not, it doesn't really benefit from defensive Terastallization because it's just going to get 2-hit KO'd anyways by basically everything, and probably even neutral O-code by everything anyways. But having that Terra normal boost to make it so that our false swipe is 60 base power, and then it makes it 90 base power because of our Technician, gives us a really strong false swipe. It's just that it's a really strong false swipe will never be able to KO the opponent. Next up we got Bruxish, and Bruxish is here mostly for the Dazzling, so that way whenever we want to have our high speed Pokemon that have built up damage, we don't want them to be getting out priority because that kind of defeats the purpose of them dealing a lot of damage, so we're going to be using Dazzling in order to get rid of that priority. And we also have the Super Fang on Bruxish because Super Fang is not as good as False Swipe for bringing a Pokemon down to 1 HP, but it's very good at bringing the opponent in KO range. And then we also have the Flip Turn for bringing in the Pokemon that we want to be picking up KOs with, and we have Psychic Fangs just as a really strong Psychic Stab option, and we're Terra Fighting Terra Blast just for when we need to break through the steals, but we can't really do it with Quick Quavel for whatever reason. Then we have Terra Fighting Terra Blast maybe to get the upper hand on the opponent. And we're Choice Scarf just so that Bruxish is moving pretty quickly with its moves. And last but not least on the team, we have a Vivillon Pokeball form, and this Vivillon is Friend Guard, so that we are protecting the Pokemon that have hopefully built up some damage, and so that way we can keep sweeping and they're not threatened by any big hits really. But also we have Rage Powder to specifically draw away single target big attacks from hitting our important Pokemon, and we have Pollen Puff in order to heal them up, as well as being a really good stab option since we are Bug, we can throw that into the opponent as well, and Tailwind for the speed control for our Pokemon that all basically lack speed control is nice. And since we are Focus Sash on Vivillon, if we Rage Powder and we draw in, like, say, one big attack from, like, a Talonflame going for Brave Bird, and then we've also Rage Powdered, say, like a status move, like a Parting Shot from an Incineroar, we could technically use Side Fell Stinger into Vivillon, or we could just have Quick Quavel KO Vivillon in order to activate the Fell Stinger or the Moxie Boost whenever Vivillon is on 1 HP. So that's a super niche use and a super niche strategy, but it's at least worth bringing up. And also we're Ghosts, just so that we're dodging the Fake Out with Vivillon, so that way we're not losing our Focus Sash to the Fake Out. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we have a team with a lot of Pokemon that looks like it would be pretty easier to Fell Stinger, especially Meowscarada with how weak it is and the fact that it's 4 times weak to the Fell Stinger. But also, like, 2 pseudo-legendaries and a Basculegion is definitely nothing to scoff at. They have a lot of offensive power here. So the battle starts, and we lead Persian and Scizor, and they lead Meowscarada and Mimikyu, and they immediately Flower Trick into Persian, which brings Persian down pretty low, but we knock off Mimikyu here in order to get rid of its item, but also to break it down into its non-form. And Mimikyu misses the Will-O-Wisp on Scizor, which wouldn't matter for this hit, as Meowscarada is always going to go down to its Focus Sash here, and we can bring in Overquill in order to get down and Intimidate, and we can bring back in Scizor here in case they were going to try and Flower Trick into the Persian slot in order to get rid of it, but Meowscarada just decided to protect out, and we could not get the Fell Stinger onto it. We could have maybe tried to Fell Stinger into Persian if we thought that the Meowscarada was either going to protect or attack into Overquill, but Meowscarada was faster than Persian there, so that would have been pretty risky. But they decided to bring in Scrafty here, who gets down and Intimidate into our Scizor and our Overquill, and Mimikyu goes Terra Grass here in order to take less damage from Scizor's Bullet Punch, and it goes for that Will-O-Wisp again, and it lands it into the Overquill slot, but Overquill decides to go Terra Bug here in order to do more Fell Stinger damage to Mimikyu, but we're so behind with the Intimidate and the Burn that the Fell Stinger really isn't doing very much damage to Mimikyu at all. We get Fell Stinger into Mimikyu, which brings it even lower, as Mimikyu just Shadow Claws into us for whatever reason, and then Scizor gets the U-turn on Mimikyu, swapping it back out into Persian, but Persian unfortunately gets knocked off by Scrafty, so we can't Fell Stinger into the Persian anymore to get our attack back. Meowscarada returns to the field and just decides to go for a Protect, as we Bullet Punch Scrafty for a tiny bit of chip there, and Scrafty hits his Scizor back with a lot of close combat damage, as we both take Burn Chip here. And Scrafty is going to protect as Meowscarada gets the knockoff, getting rid of Overquill's safety goggles. And Overquill finally does pick up that Fellstinger KO on the Meowscarada, but it's going to get KO'd by Burn, so it doesn't get to do anything with it. As Basculegion now hits the field, and we have Quaquaval in the back, and Scizor is not really doing anything. It doesn't have great moves for hitting, and Basculegion is Choice Scarf there, so it's faster than Quaquaval, and just gets to destroy Quaquaval with Last Respects, as Scrafty is able to finish off the Scizor. So, not a very easy game to gain momentum there, even though they had a lot of pieces that we could have used to gain momentum. The fact that they were able to just outprotect our Overquill and intimidate us down to make it so that it was really difficult to get the KO with Fellstinger like we wanted, or even if we brought in Quaquaval would have gotten absolutely trashed by Meowscarada. We really didn't have a great fighting chance this game. If I was to play this match differently, I think I would have just immediately led Vivillon and Overquill in order to use Vivillon to try and Pollen Puff into the Meowscarada and then get off the Fellstinger into Meowscarada in one turn, so that even if they bring in Scrafty to intimidate us, then we would at least be at +2. But it just kind of goes to show that, like, the Fellstinger strategy really does not have much room for error. Like, you gotta get it going pretty quickly. Here we have a sand team with no specific sand components except for Gastrodon being a ground type and Goldengo being a steel type. But the game starts out and we lead Persian and Quaquaval here, perhaps looking to get a false swipe, but it's the two Pokemon that are the hardest to false swipe on the opponent team. And they immediately decide to Terra Flying their Tyranitar, but we go for the knockoff into Goldengo so that it's easier to pick up the Aqua Step there, as the Aqua Step crit probably doesn't matter on Goldengo. So we get our speed boost and our attack boost, but Tyranitar is just able to easily take out Persian with the low kick there. We can bring in Scizor as the opponent brings in Flamigo, but they actually swap immediately to Gastrodon as Bullet Punch does some damage to Tyranitar, but our Aqua Step is caught by Gastrodon, so we don't get any Aqua Step damage into Tyranitar, and they do crit us there with the Terra Blast, which probably mattered if I had to guess. Maybe you should have Terra Fired Quaquaval there in order to make it so that Quaquaval survives the turn, but we can now bring in Overquill to at least intimidate Tyranitar, and we Terra Bug Overquill because I didn't want to take a ground type move from Gastrodon, but we go for the Poison Jab to try and take a Tyranitar here, as we do in fact catch the Earth Power, and it gives us a special defense drop, but Tyranitar missed the Rock Slide and Overquill, which was the big thing I wasn't quite expecting there. Bullet Punch goes into Flamigo to chip it a bit, and Flamigo's trying to take out Overquill since it's probably faster. And Scizor is now in threat of being put to sleep, and Flamigo actually reveals that his upper hand for Scizor's Bullet Punch, which means that we don't get to pick up the KO with the Fellstinger on the Flamigo like we may have liked here. And Flamigo is just able to Brave Bird Overquill on the next turn, KOing itself due to the Brave Bird, but in a Scizor versus Gastrodon scenario, Gastrodon is able to just Earth Power into Scizor and take it out here. So another game where we gained a lot of momentum immediately on turn 1, but it kind of felt like because we were going for the Fellstinger strategy that we lost a lot of that momentum immediately whenever we lost Quaquaval. Lastly, we have a battle against a pretty normal team here, as they are Fire, Water, Grass with Rillaboom, Talonflame, and the Primarina, and then they also have the Dragapult as their Dragon Core Breaker, and the Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Kingambit are always very offensive pieces. So we lead Vivillon and Scizor here, not leading Persian this time, perhaps learning from my mistakes, but Talonflame goes for the Tailwind, and they immediately Hyper Voice here, so Scizor doesn't take too much damage, but Vivillon takes a lot, and Vivillon gets to set up its own Tailwind, and we U-turn out into our Quaquaval, as we bring in Bruxish here, and we catch the Brave Bird from Talonflame, since Talonflame hasn't taken any damage yet, and we get the close combat into Ursaluna, which means that our defenses are down, but we at least have an attack boost, and we get the Psychic Fangs in the Dragapult, but Dragapult does a lot of damage into us with that Dragon Darts, and Flare Blitz from Talonflame is actually enough to bring down Quaquaval, unfortunately, so we're kind of out of damage pieces at this point, but Scizor with Bullet Punch is able to pick off the Dragapult, as Scizor with Terra Water is able to take the Flare Blitz from Talonflame, and now Talonflame is super low, and Rillaboom comes in, but it can't fake out on this turn because we still have Bruxish on the field, but now that we're a water type, Scizor is going to be taken out by the Rillaboom as Bruxish takes Talonflame, and it's a 2v1 scenario where we have a bug flying type, and it's only because we have a bug flying type in a back. I feel like we're really able to defeat Rillaboom here, because Rillaboom does Wood Hammer into Bruxish, but Rillaboom is brought pretty low. Tries to Terrafire here just to survive the Pollen Puff, but unfortunately it does not get it. So yeah, that was the not KOing your opponent until you KO your opponent team, or whatever I have it called in the title of the video. And obviously this strategy is really not a strategy. Like, the Fellstinger and the Moxie, more often than not, whenever you play them in VGC, feel like something that you can't really do to regain momentum. It's just like a tiny little thing that's nice if you already have momentum, but if you already have momentum and you're trying to use a Pokemon that just gives you more momentum, it's better off if it just feels like you already had stronger Pokemon rather than Pokemon that try to become a little bit stronger by using either Fellstinger or Moxie. So it's really not a strategy. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.